Well, China's President Xi Jinping has opened up a twice-a-decade Communist Party Congress at which he's expected to be handed an unprecedented third term in office. Joining me live now is the former DFAT Australia-China Council scholar, Andrew Phelan. He's our expert in these matters. Andrew, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So, first up, what did you make of his speech? What was your takeout from it?
Well, if anything, Peter, it's a doubling down. So I think, the jury's in. He's got the third term as expected. The question is now, what does that mean for the rest of the world?
Okay, so it's more of the same. So there's not going to be anything majorly different to his next term and probably 2 terms.
Well, there's all these sort of headwinds coming together at once. And I note that the Americans have just started these sanctions on the export of high-end chips, and that's had a dramatic effect, immediate effect on manufacturing in China. Every American engineering executive involved in the chip manufacturing, chip industry in China has resigned effectively immediately. And ASML, the Dutch supplier of the capital equipment that's used in making high-end chips, has ceased servicing its Chinese customers. So that is, I think the Americans anticipated the third term. They were worried about China's advances in chips, in artificial intelligence, in weaponizing these things. So they've stepped in what is the biggest, I think, US move against China in the last several years, even bigger than anything that the Trump administration had done. The ramifications for this, and it's hit just before the Congress, are going to be massive. And I would expect China to find some way to retaliate. How so? Well, that's the big question. If you look at OPEC during the current crisis, the 13 members of OPEC, they've reduced their oil production. You've got to ask, well, what might China do? Well, if you think of OPEC, it's a cartel, it's an oligopoly. If you imagine for a moment that all of the materials and technologies for the electrification revolution were controlled by one country, effectively a monopoly. Well, that's what we've got. China processes 100% of processed graphite, about 70% of lithium, 70% of cathodes. They have a virtual monopoly on photovoltaic cells for solar, wind turbines, and all this sort of stuff. So all the stuff that we talk about in Australia at the moment about, the Teals and the Labor Party are talking about with renewables could be potentially held ransom by China in a trade type of retaliation. So these are part of the consequences, in your view, that the US and Australia may face with Xi Jinping going forward? Well, China's used this sort of trade coercion before, not just with us, but as Ambassador Yamagami, Japan's ambassador to Australia, has said, China has weaponized rare earths before. So this is a threat to Australia, but it's also a great opportunity because Australia, and when we've had lithium resources here, deposits near Darwin that were developed with federal government grants that have ended up in Chinese hands. So I think there's a major opportunity here, and some mates of mine are active in this space, bringing in investors from like-minded democracies, particularly countries like Japan and South Korea, to invest in deposits that we have right here. We've got $2 trillion sitting in super funds. So this is a threat to Australia, but it's also a major opportunity. Right. So where is it? Back to Xi Jinping and his speech, where's the threat going to come from? I was chatting to Dave Sharma about this earlier, and we talked, and it's well known, we've spoken about this too, Andrew, that the Chinese economy, the bizarre push after all this time for COVID zero, bearing in mind that most of Xi Jinping's detractors end up getting rubbed out in one way or another, where could the problem lie for him? Do you know, it's funny, I was thinking leading up to the Congress that once the Congress was over, China would start phasing out zero COVID. And it's almost unbelievable that Xi is saying, no, we're going to stay the course for a policy that is clearly not working and makes no sense. I mean, he backed himself into this corner because Chinese domestic vaccines were less efficacious and less percentage of the population had been vaccinated. But the level of frustration this is causing among ordinary people, it's just completely disproportionate. We had, in the last couple of months, we had people that were being bused to quarantine centres. One case in Guizhou where their bus went off a road and 27 people were killed. Nobody's died from, the virus itself. We had people in Xinjiang dying of starvation in lockdown, and ordinary people, even in Shanghai, that were struggling to get food. So, it's just as if Xi can do no wrong. Nobody dares to object to him because of the consequences.
Yeah.
So it's a frightening situation. And as you mentioned on Taiwan, I think there'll be more resources channeled towards the military. And that, of course, for the world and particularly for Australia, is the other big concern.
Yep, no doubt about that. Andrew Phelan, always good to have you with us. Thanks again.